Hello, scholars. We are going to do a reading lesson now. We're going to be working on asking and answering questions when we're reading a passage. So before we get started, I wanted to talk about our question words. And those question words I have written right here are who, what, when, where, and why. I want you to think about these words because we've used them before, and oftentimes they connect to different parts of the story that we know about. The who usually is talking about the characters. The what is talking about the plot or the sequence of events. The when has to do with the setting on when the story is taking place. And then the where has to be doing with the setting as well on where it is, the location of the story. And then the why might have to do with the character's feelings like we've talked about. So today we're going to read a few different short little stories and passages and go through asking and answering some questions about them using those question words. Now, I want to review those question words one last time, so say them with me. Who, what, when, where, why. Now, say them again as I point to them. I'm going to mix it up, so be on your toes. When, who, why, what, where. Good job. Now we are ready to go since we now know our question words to work on answering and asking and answering questions about the story. So I'm going to share my screen with you all so we can be reading the same story at the same time. Let's see. Here we go. Awesome. So we have a story over here. We're going to start with something super simple, so it just has some pictures of a story and some little captions with it. So let's think about some questions that we might have with this while we're reading it. So I'm going to read it with you and read it with me. Maria and Pete went for a hike with Mom and Dad. And you can see in that picture that they're all hiking with all of their gear and on a path. The next one. They came to a wide river. We can also see the river right there in the picture. Next up, how will we get across? I already noticed that this text is written a little differently than the others, and it's in a little speech bubble, so I know that one of the characters is asking that question. So let's think about some questions that we might have about this story. Now, if we look in the chart over here on the right side of your screen, it has ask questions and answer questions. And it already has two questions written for us. It has who is in the story. Who? That's one of our question words. And it answered that one already too. Maria, Pete, Mom, and Dad. I want you to now go back to our little cartoon story and find where that answer is. Ooh. The first one says all of the names of the people in that story. All of the, what's our big term for it? Characters. Good job. All of the characters. The characters are Maria, Pete, Mom, and Dad. Now, next up, our next question says, what do they do? Now, I want you to think about what the question word is in that sentence. What is the question word as well? So what are they doing in this sentence or in this story? And they are, they are going on a hike. So I'm going to add that in right here. They are going on, going on a hike. All right, so I can add that right there. Now, I want to think about some other questions that I might have. I might think about my question stems and see, or my question words to see if there's any. Let's see, I'll grab my board right back. Okay, so we have a question with who in it, and we have a question with what in it. So next up, We can think about when. When did this story take place? That's a great question. So I'm going to write right here, when did this story take place? I could have also said, when do they go on a hike? It doesn't necessarily say it in any of this, which makes, but if I'm looking at the pictures, I see that it is sunny outside and that it looks like it is daytime. So my answer then is going to be daytime. I don't have to get too specific, so that's a good answer. All right. Now, so I have who. Why don't we check off our questions that we have? We have who. We have a what question. We have a when question. Where? Where does this story take place? That is a great question. So we'll write that one in there. Where does this story take place? We're gonna have to look at our question or we're gonna have to look at the pictures and back at our story. So let's read again. Maria and Pete went for a hike with Mom and Dad. They came to a wide river. How will they get across? A river. That's part of the setting. So I know there's a river because it told me, and I can see it. I can also see some mountains and some trees. So we can put outdoors near a river. Let's see if I can get my mouse has decided to stop working. Here we go. Outside by a river. All right, so we have that now. Now, one last question. We have one last question word. Why? What in this sentence could we ask a why about? What are they trying to do at the end? What do they realize that they need to do? That's right, they're trying to figure out how to cross the river. So we're going to say, why do they need to cross the river? Why do they need to cross the river? Think about that. I think that they might need to cross to reach the other side so they can finish their hike. So that's what I'm going to put as my answer, to reach the other side and finish their hike. Awesome job asking and answering questions. Now, all right, now we're going to practice asking and answering questions with a new story called Saving the Train. So the first thing that we're going to do before we think about our questions is we're going to read the story. So read along with me. Owen and Amy walked along the Green River. They had never seen the water so high. A storm the day before had brought heavy rain as they walked around a bend in the river. They could hardly believe their eyes. The railroad bridge over the river had fallen into the rushing water. The noon train will be here soon, Owen said to his sister. It'll crash right into the river. We've got to go tell someone. There's no time to get anyone, Amy said. We'll have to stop it ourselves. I have an idea, she shouted as she turned and sped home. When she got there, Amy took a big white tablecloth from the table. She grabbed a can of red paint and a brush. Then she painted the words, "Stop, bridge out," on the cloth. Amy dashed as fast as she could back to Owen. They could hear the train coming. They held the painted cloth between them and waved, but the train flew by. Had no one seen their warning? A second later, the train's brakes screeched and its whistle blew loudly. It came to a full stop. Amy and Owen had saved the train. Now, we're going to write a list of questions and then go back and read the story to help answer our questions. So, as we get started on answering or writing our list of questions, I'm going to think about the story and what questions I might have in it, and I'm going to use my question words to help me out. So, the first question I'm going to ask is a who question, which is about the characters in the story. So I'm going to ask my question of who is in the story. And remember, our questions sentences have a question mark at the end. Now I'm not going to answer it yet because I'm going to write all my questions and then reread my story. So my next question, let's go back to our piece of paper where we have our who. Next is going to be what. I'm going to go back and look at the story, saving the train in the bridge. My what might be, what happened to the bridge? I can see that in the picture. I know I want to find out what happened to the bridge. And if you can write these questions down along the video with us if you would like. All right, so that's our next question. What happened to the bridge? Now, so I have my who, I have my what, and now my when. I don't really know if I have a when. When is this happening? That could be a great question. Yup, when is this happening? All right, so I'll type that in for this one. When, maybe not when is this happening, we want to be specific, remember that word? When did the bridge fall? Because that looks like what happened. Okay, let's see, another question word could be how, and we didn't have that one on our chart, but we can also ask how something happens. So how, I want to know, how did they save the train? Because the title of our story is Saving the Train, so I want to know how that happened. And then our last question for this box, and remember, we can have many more questions, but our box only has these few squares. So that's all I'm thinking about right now. Now I'm going to do, let's see. So I have a who, a what, a when, a how. Oh, I need to look back at my chart. Okay, let's see. What words on here do I not have yet? I want to know what could happen to the train. So they might have saved the train, but what could happen to the train? So we'll put that down as a question too, because if they're going to save it, then what could have happened to it before they saved it? All right, so now we have our questions, and let's read those again. Who is in the story? What happened to the bridge? When did the bridge fall? How did they save the train? And what could happen to the train? Now, before we answer them, we're going to go back over and reread the story, because rereading the story is key to figuring out the answers to our questions. So, saving the train. We're going to start all the way back up at the top. Owen and Amy walked along the Green River. They had never seen the water so high. A storm the day before had brought heavy rain. As they walked around a bend in the river, they could hardly believe their eyes. The railroad bridge over the river had fallen into the rushing water. The noon train will be here soon, Owen said to his sister. It'll crash right into the river. We've got to tell someone. There's no time to get anyone, Amy said. We'll have to stop it ourselves. I have an idea, she shouted as she turned and sped home. When she got there, Amy took a big white tablecloth from the table. She grabbed a can of red paint and a brush. Then she painted the words, "Stop, bridge out," on a cloth. Amy dashed as fast as she could back to Owen. They could hear the train coming. They held the painted cloth between them and waved, but the train flew by. Had no one seen their warning? A second later, the train's brakes screeched and its whistle blew loudly. It came to a full stop. Amy and Owen had saved the train. So let's go back to the questions that we asked now and find out their answers after we read it. So who is in the story? That is right. We do know who is in the story now. And the who is our characters, Owen and Amy. So we'll put that next to that question. What happened to the bridge? Let's see. Let's go back to the story. Let's read until we hit the word bridge and see if we can find an answer. So I'm going to read. Owen and Amy walked along the river. They had never seen the water so high. A storm that day before had brought heavy rain. As they walked on the bend of the river, they could hardly believe their eyes. The railroad bridge. Oh, that's the word that I was looking for because that's what I was trying to find information on. The bridge over the river had fallen into rushing water. So I am gonna go ahead and circle the word bridge because that's what we are looking for. Now I don't want to lose that word because that's the first time it's mentioned in the story. So the bridge had fallen into the rushing water. It had fallen into the rushing water. All right, so now we have our answer for that question. So let's keep on going. Make this a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, next up, when did the bridge fall? So it fell in the storm. And when was the storm? The day before. Okay, see, I found that answer right here. A storm the day before. And we know that the bridge fell during the storm. So when did the bridge fall? The day before. All right. Next up, how did they save the train? So we know that they were trying to save the train because they knew that the noon train was coming and Amy got the idea. So how did they save it? Let's look down here with her sign on her tablecloth. So they made a sign on the tablecloth. And then they waved it to the train for the train to see. All right, now what could happen to the train? If the train didn't stop, what could happen? If the bridge is broken and the train is going and they don't tell the people, the trains could fall off the track into the river, which would not be very good. So we have now asked and answered questions about key details from our story, Saving the Train. Awesome job. All right. All right, now we're going to practice answering questions that have already been asked for us in a multiple choice format. So let's read our story first, because that's always the most important part, is to make sure we read our story completely. So let's start with our title, The Climb. "Grandpa, look," I cried. "It's a ship." I could hardly believe my eyes. There was a huge ship with tall sails far out at sea. We waved our arms and shouted, "Help! Help!" We had been stranded on the island for weeks. I was out fishing with Grandpa one day when the weather suddenly changed. A storm blew our fishing boat off course and onto a rocky island. Grandpa steered the best he could, landing us on the shore. But our boat was ruined. We had no way back to the little seaside town we called home. The huge ship was the first we'd seen, and it was sailing right past us. "It's no use, Sarah," Grandpa said. "They can't see us." "But if they could, if I was up there," I said. I pointed to the top of a high, rocky hill. Grandpa looked worried, but he knew there was no other way. I had to climb the rocks quickly, but carefully, and not look down. When I got to the top, I shouted and flashed a small mirror. I was about to give up when a light flashed back. "We are saved!" The end. Short little story. So now let's look at our first question. Question number 1. Where does the story take place? And remember, my where questions are asking me about the setting. So where did this story take place? Let's go back and start reading again to see if we can figure it out. "Grandpa, look," I cried. "It's a ship." I could hardly believe my eyes. There was a huge ship with sails far out at sea. We waved our arms and shouted, "Help, help." So I know there's somewhere near a sea, but let me keep reading to see if I can get a little bit more specific. We had been stranded on the island for weeks. All right, so I'm going to underline sea so we don't forget that one. And island. All right. I was out fishing with Grandpa one day when the weather suddenly changed. A storm blew our fishing boat off course and onto a rocky island. Rocky Island has even more specific details about that island. Grandpa steered the best he could, but landed us on shore. But our boat was ruined, and they had no way back to the little seaside town they call home. So let's go back to our question, where does the story take place? Now, I just read that it takes place at sea on a rocky island and not a boat. So let's read through our answers and let's cross out any that we know are wrong to help us pick the right one. And remember, we need to read all the answers before we pick one. So A, on a huge ship at sea. There is a huge ship in it, but it's not where they are. They see it. So I'm going to cross that one out because I know that's not where exactly they are. On Grandpa's fishing boat, that might be it because they were on the boat and then it crashed. So let's keep going to see if there's a better answer. On a small rocky island. Ooh, I think that was a little bit better than the boat one because their boat crashed. So when we're reading, they're on the island. Now remember, I can't just pick it. I need to make sure there's not a better answer waiting. So let's keep on reading. D, on a little seaside town. Now that's where they were from, but it's not where they were. They couldn't get back there. So I'm going to cross that one out and know that the best answer was C. Good job. All right, now let's keep reading and read question number 2. Read it with me. What causes Sarah and Grandpa's fishing boat to crash? Choose the sentence from the story that answers this question. Now let's go back and read that question one more time. What causes Sarah and Grandpa's fishing boat to crash? I think we just read it, but let's go back into the story and see. We'd said a storm. A storm. Let's see, we'll put a little, see if we can get some highlight. A storm blew our fishing boat off course. Now let's see if that sentence is in our answers or if there's another one that says pretty much the same thing. So we have A, We had been stranded on the island for weeks. That has to do with them being stranded, but it's not what caused them. We have to look exactly at what the question's asking us. All right, B. A storm blew our fishing boat off course and onto a rocky island. That's the answer that I just highlighted and found back in my story. So I'm going to check it, but remember, we got to go back through all the answers to make sure there's not a better one. We had no way back to the little seaside town we called home. That's not going to be it because that's not answering our question of what causes Sarah. So we're going to cross it out. And now let's read our last question, or our last answer. D. When I got to the top, I shouted and flashed a small mirror. Let's go back to our question. What causes Sarah and Grandpa's fishing boat to crash? That doesn't have to do with whether their fishing boat crashed, so we'll cross it out. And it looks like our best answer was B, so we will circle that and move on. All right, so now we're on to our assignment. Your reading assignment this week is going to read this story, Operation Rescue Possum, and then answer some questions about it. I will post the story and the questions on Google so that you can look at it a lot better than looking at this video, but I will go ahead and read the story to you. So read along with me. Operation Rescue Possum. One day, Jackie found a possum in the window well. "Hello, Possum," Jackie said. "You look stuck. How did you get down there, anyhow?" The possum hissed at Jackie. Jackie's big brothers came around the corner of the house. "What you got there, Jackie?" they said. "A stuck possum," Jackie said. "We've got to get that possum out," Artie and Danny said. "Time for Operation Rescue Possum." They hurried to their workshop from the barn. When Jackie followed, Artie and Danny were already hard at work drawing up plans. "We don't want to touch the possum," Artie said. "It might bite. Besides, it looks too big to just lift." Artie showed Jackie their plan. "How will you get the possum to stay on that platform?" Jackie asked. All right, so now we're at the top of the next page. Artie and Danny looked at each other. "We'll have to make a harness," Artie decided. "We'll clip the harness onto a hook," Danny said. "Then we'll lower something possums like to eat on a pole and use it as bait." "Right," said Artie. Jackie poked around in the barn until he found a nice long board. Artie and Danny were so busy with their plans they didn't even notice. Jackie dragged the board around the house. He slid it into the window well. Now Jackie waited. The possum sniffed the board, then poked it with one foot, then waddled up the board and out of the window well and into the woods behind the barn. Operation Rescue Possum was a success. All right, now I'm going to have these 2 pages up of questions for you on Google Drive, and I want you to write down your answers and either post them back onto the Google Classroom or send them to me in a text. And I'll read through the questions right here just for you. Number 1, where does Jackie find the stuck possum? A, by the house, B, in the workshop, C, by the barn, D, in the woods. Now question number 2. This question has parts. First, answer part A, then answer part B. So we'll look at part A. What did Jackie think of Artie and Danny's plan? A, he didn't understand it. B, he thought it was a great idea. C, he didn't think it would work. Or D, he was afraid it would hurt the possum. Part B, write a sentence from the story that helped your answer the question from part A. So here you're writing down a sentence. Yes, you can write the sentence verbatim from the story. Copy a sentence down that helped you answer this question up here. Now question number 3. Read the sentences from the story. Jackie dragged the board around the house. He slid it into the window well. Which question do these sentences answer? A, who went to the workshop in the barn? B, why were Danny and Artie planning to make a harness? C, where did Jackie find the board he dragged around the house? Or D, how did Jackie plan to get the possum out of the window well? Remember to think through all the choices before you pick one and you pick the best one. And then our last question is, again, this question has two parts. So first answer part A, then answer part B. Part A, read these sentences from the story. We've got to get that possum out, Artie and Danny said. Time for Operation Rescue Possum. What does rescue mean in this sentence? A, trick, B, find, C, save, or D, catch. And now I'm going to change these directions a little bit. So for part B, I want you to go back and write the sentence that helped you figure out what the word rescue means. And again, you can text these answers to me just on a sheet of paper in a text message on Google Classroom, however you want to get these questions answered to me. Let me know if you have any questions on understanding the assignment or what I was teaching. You can replay any parts of this video or the whole video. Thank you all for listening.